Hello there. In today's video, I want to talk about my favorite learning resources for Playdate game development. I created two games. One of them was made in Pulp and the other one was made in the SDK, which means that the scope of knowledge needed to make those two games was quite varied. Pulp and the SDK have certain things in common since they both operate on the same console, and the console is a closed system with its own restrictions and requirements. But creating a game in Pulp is very different from creating a game in the SDK. That's why I don't want to promote too many video resources, because some of the links that I'm going to send already will have lists of videos and playlists of videos about Playdate game development. I wanted to focus on slightly more traditional knowledge sources, mostly written ones, although there will be one exception at the end of this video. What I wanted to focus most on is actually two things. First of all is the Playdate official Dev Forum, which you can see right now. It has all of the expected categories like SDK getting help, development discussions, bug reports, features, stuff about games, stuff about Pulp. SDK occupies much more space than Pulp, since like I said in one of my other videos, I think that the majority of games are made with the SDK, at least the games that eventually are published on Catalog, which is Panic's storefront. When I was starting development on Magic Castle, which was based on the Pulp engine, the Pulp category was my go-to. It was still the semi-early days of the Playdate, so there was a lot of traffic here. I'm not sure how much traffic there is here right now. I don't visit this place anymore, unless there is something very, very specific that I'm looking for. But I remember that there was one specific topic that was really instrumental to my understanding of Pulp, to what I can do with Pulp, and also thinking about this engine a bit more holistically, not just based on the popular examples that you can see all over the web, but also somebody else's chain of thought, strategy, how they think about certain aspects of Playdate game development with Pulp specifically in mind. And the topic which I'm mentioning here is Orkn's Pulp Devlog. It's a pretty massive devlog which has lots of different entries. Some of them are just specific devlogs about a specific game, right, like Resonant Tale. Some of them are just small demos, like a scrolling platformer, smoothly animated movement, which to me was really important, because that's one of the things that I also used in Magic Castle. Reading through this whole thread was really illuminating in the best possible way. There are so many snippets of wisdom here that you cannot find in any other video, in any video on YouTube. You cannot find anywhere else. I think this is not just a continued effort of documenting somebody's progress with a new engine. It also has those moments of triumph, of discovery. There is community feedback as well. So I think that this is something that cannot be overstated in a way. A thread on the forum has its own merits, since it's a living document. A YouTube video like this one, for example, I'm going to finish it, I'm going to publish it, and then if somebody wants to have a chat, have a discussion, I'm always open for that. There's a place for comments, there's a place to send me a message. That's all well and good, but it's not the same as posting something and then getting immediate feedback on it from the whole community, and then maybe posting something else and creating more of a chat, more of a conversation, discussion, rather than presentation. A video is more like a presentation, a forum is more like a conversation, and I think that it brings a lot to the table, especially if you're looking for knowledge, especially if you're looking for those interesting tidbits of knowledge and design. So reading through all of this was a major inspiration to me and a major turning point when I was thinking about video game dev, because at this stage when I was reading all of this, it wasn't I haven't even done anything in Pulp at that stage. I was still thinking about it in my own head, like whether or not I want to invest my time into it. Do I maybe want to do something else? At that stage I was still just a web developer with no actual knowledge of game development. I had one unsuccessful attempt at game development where I simply downloaded Unity, opened it up, looked at the UX and all of the options that were available, said nope, and that was it. That was my Unity experience. So with that in mind, I was wondering, I wonder if Pulp, which is supposed to be much simpler, I wonder if that can make a game that I have in my head, if it's not too simple, if it's not too constrained. But then all of those little updates that continuously blew my mind were something that really turned me around and convinced me to get my feet wet with Playdate game development. So I cannot recommend this thread enough. It's just full of really cool stuff. And I cannot really recommend the whole forum enough. It's there's a lot of good threads here. There's a lot of things that you will find only here, with solutions that are only here. And sometimes, sometimes even when somebody asks a question and that question is unanswered and it's really old, you might wonder, maybe if there are no replies, and maybe the person who posted that, maybe they found their own solution. You can always try contacting that person. Maybe they have a good solution to that problem, if they still remember, of course, because some of those things are made in a very hasty way, and sometimes when I'm asked how did I achieve a specific effect, it's very difficult to go back in time and think about the chain of thought that supported that specific solution. I do recommend the forum. There's a lot of good knowledge to be found here. The same thing I can say about Playdate's official and unofficial resources. The official ones are, well, obviously the ones that they wrote themselves. The unofficial ones are links to other people, to other places that Panic thought were good enough to include in their dev section, because all of this can be found in the dev section of the website. You've got once you click here, you've got the SDK, Pulp, links, dev help, and catalog if you're a catalog developer only. But by going into the developer section, you have this document, Designing for Playdate, and I think that this is one of the most important things that you can read, especially if you have never made any game whatsoever, but also if it's your first Playdate game. And the reason why I'm saying that is that this is engine agnostic. It doesn't matter if you're thinking about making a Pulp game or if you're thinking about an SDK game. The topics that are covered on this list are just about creating a good game for the Playdate and using all of the things that the Playdate offers to you. There's some things about the screen and what to expect from the screen. There's some stuff about sprites and what is a reasonable size for a sprite, like how your sprite can look good on a big screen, a good PC screen, but not so good anymore when you're having it on a tiny device, something that a lot of people forget. Even in web development, I sometimes had this issue in teams that people still make websites for laptop screens and PC screens, forgetting that the majority of the visitors for that specific website or application will be actually smartphone users, and that's where the best practice mobile first comes from. But I digress. Basically, all of the gotchas, all of the easy traps to fall into are listed here, things that you might not even think about, which will not be covered by any of those YouTube videos, by any of those devlogs, are covered here: the basics, the introductions, the ways of thinking about certain problems. This is all here in this design document. It covers fonts, it covers graphics, specific graphical aspects, transforming of bitmap images, how they how they might not look good after the transformation, what to do about it. What happens when the sprite is not detailed enough, dithering, that I've talked a little bit about myself, how that influences the look of the game. There's a lot of things that are being covered here, and also things that I would say are slightly neglected by most Playdate developers, myself included. When I was doing Magic Castle for Pulp, I didn't include the crank, for example, and I think that was a mistake, because the crank is the unique point of the Playdate. That's something unique about this whole device. That's what makes it so adorable in a way. And I think that not using the crank was a mistake. It doesn't have to be like in that game where you have to crank to pause the time, because that was a bit excessive. I think the community and most players, I think, reached the conclusion that that kind of excessive crank usage is not is neither comfortable nor fun. That it's good to scale back a little bit from that kind of usage. More precision, less just quick cranking reflexes. But it's also cool that they mentioned the accelerometer, which was just really cool to play with. I have one minigame with that feature in the Fall of Magic Castle too, and it's just a joy to work with systems that are not just based on button input, but also the real physical world around you, and how that can also influence gameplay aspects. So that's something absolutely maybe not unique, because other controllers also have this kind of functionality, smartphones and whatnot, but it's rarely used in a game. It's something that I think that Nintendo is best at. They like to have, people call them gimmicks. I think that's a bit it's downplaying the sheer fun of certain functions. Maybe it does feel gimmicky after a while, but there is something unique about trying to do a different mechanic and seeing if it sticks. And even if it doesn't, I still applaud the effort, so to speak. So this design document shows just so many different things, and talks about them in a nice, really to the point way, where you're not getting lost in the weeds. There's not too much. There's no unnecessary detail here. Everything is well thought out. So I really do recommend this one specific thing if you're ever gonna go through designing or developing a game for the Playdate. There's also the documentation for Pulp and the SDK, but I guess that's quite self-explanatory. Those are instruction manuals that you really need if you're doing something, and skipping on that is never a good idea, so I'm not even gonna talk too much about this here. This whole developer section has good sections about all of the aspects of how a game should be made, what kind of a checklist you might go through if you're finishing your game or if you're just starting your game. How does the distribution and submitting to Playdate work? That's also good to know, I guess. If you're thinking about the financial aspect of this whole endeavor, then it might be a good idea to see what is allowed, what kind of cooperation will you establish between yourself and Panic. What can you expect from Itch as well, because those are the two major storefronts where people publish their games. So it's good to be informed before making those kinds of decisions. Obviously, there's a lot of good things in here, but I also want to mention useful links for Playdate development and useful links for making games in Pulp specifically. The Playdate development section is a bit more general. Pulp is, well, just about Pulp, but the useful links for Playdate development are again a bit more general. There's a lot of stuff about the SDK, But there's also some books, there's also some specific libraries mentioned, coding tools. Go through them. I messed up by not going through this list at the beginning of development, and some things I knew already from the Dev Forum, for example, like the panels framework, the animated sprite framework, just by checking the forums often. But I remember when I did my first demo before actual development of the Fall of Magic Castle, I didn't have a Playdate VS Code template, and that was a mistake because I didn't have anything like that. The whole pipeline of writing code and then running the simulator and bundling all of that was a bit more difficult than it should be. I noticed that after I added certain plugins, certain templates, suddenly the whole pipeline was a bit more automated and just easier to work with. There's also a little bit about graphics and fonts, about making your own font or maybe editing an existing font. There's some stuff about languages, about how to think about certain programming languages and then use them in Pulp, in the SDK development, a couple of devlogs. It's just a very good resource list, and I really recommend it. Same goes also for this book, Make Games for Playdate with Lua, made by Brett. I picked this book up when it was still in its beta phase. Right now it's fully finished, it's done, all of the chapters are fully fleshed out. I picked it up and read it from cover to cover when it was still in its alpha or beta phase, so not all of the chapters were finished. But that didn't matter. It was a fantastic introduction to SDK game development, and it was something that kickstarted the whole development of the Fall of Magic Castle 2. I was stumbling a little bit. I was not having too much success with understanding what I'm even doing with the SDK. The price of entry to the SDK is higher than Pulp. It has to be because it's a more involved tool, but I was still a bit discouraged by my lack of understanding, my lack of perspective on how to even start working with the SDK. And I remember that videos didn't do it for me for some reason. I just couldn't vibe with any of those instructional videos that were there on the web, despite the fact that they were made by people with a lot of passion and they had lots of good information in there. I just think it ultimately boils down to the question of how do you learn most effectively. Some people don't know that. Some people know exactly that if they want to learn something effectively, they have to engage with a video, or they have to just learn by doing and making mistakes, or they have to read through something, or they have to be left alone so that nobody stands in their way. And this is something that I have also observed by working in a team of programmers in web development, where some people just really thrive when somebody sits right next to them and tells them step by step what to do, or just engages with a discussion with them, and they don't feel pressured, they don't feel stressed, they feel empowered and start doing stuff immediately. Some people are the exact opposite, and they need to have their own alone in the corner time. I'm talking about myself. Alone in the corner time where they just process the information, play around, do it themselves, and then once everything clicks, then you can go back into communicating with others. So everybody has a different way of learning. For me, video materials sometimes do it, sometimes don't, but books are always good for me, and in this specific case I think that this is a really, really fantastic resource. It scales gradually, starts simple. It starts with stuff like tooling, installation. It doesn't even start immediately with the development phase, but just eases you into this line of thinking. And by using simple examples, by using games that are very easy to replicate these days and are good case studies of gradual programming difficulty improvement, then it's just easy to follow through those kinds of things. I'm very happy that this book is finished now. I guess it's even better than it was. It was already fantastic when I read it back then. So it's just a good resource. And the last thing I want to talk about is or are free games on itch. There are quite a few free Playdate games on itch. There's really a lot of them. Currently 439 results. And I think that some of those are also pretty good case studies on what you can do with Playdate, because you have this tactile feel of actually playing the game and then thinking creatively about the game, dissecting the game's mechanics, since some of them are pretty small, pretty bite-sized experiences. I really enjoyed Root Beer, and it gave me a better understanding of what makes the Playdate tick. Even nowadays, when I want to show the Playdate to somebody who does no gaming at all in their lives, or just casual gaming, or are from a different generation than mine, it's usually Root Beer, because it's so easy to just pick up and play, and it has that immediacy to it that is really, really fun. I remember that Woodland was also a really, really good blueprint for me of what Pulp can do, and what is the typical Pulp experiences, but typical in a good way, of how you can leverage the engine's strengths to create something that works out of the box and immediately pulls you right into this adventure style gameplay. There's a couple of ports like Celeste. There's Illumination that uses the panels framework, so that's also a good way of just checking out how it looks like when it's done correctly and finished, and just glorious in its art presentation. So I really do recommend also using itch for those free games. The filters that I've set here are just top-rated free games tagged Playdate, and then you can find the best examples of what the community has done for free. Obviously, if you want to pay, then there's Catalog. There's also paid games on itch, so you can go that route. But if you're just browsing, if you're just looking through different design ideas, like, you don't have to play the whole library just to get an idea of what you want to make yourself. It's also perfectly valid to just go through some of the community's most beloved free games. Yeah, so that's all for today's video, and I'll see you in the next one.